It's our turn, episode number 92, Games with Seasoning. In this episode, Mark and I talk about season-themed games, and Jesse tells us about gaming burnout.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic supporters on Patreon.com. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps us to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn. I'm Cathy Ford.
And I'm Mark Ford.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hello, my love.
So today Mark is joining me for the hot topic. I was going to be discussing this with Anna Maria Jackson Phelps, but that poor sweetheart came down sick. And so she will be joining me next episode along with my niece Nicole. So in the meantime, Mark and I are going to talk about games with seasons. But first, we're going to start off, like we usually do, talking about games that we've gotten to the table recently. And as you might expect, with Mark being my husband, we play a lot of games together. So
You think?
The two games that we're discussing today in our What Have We Played Recently are games that we've actually played together. So Mark, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Absolutely. The first game I want to talk about, also in keeping with our theme for this week, is actually called Indian Summer. It's the latest and greatest from Uwe Rosenberg, that super designer that we all know and either love, hate, or can't get along without. The artist for this is Andrea Bokoff, and the publisher is Stronghold Games, published in 2017. And what we have here is a tile-laying game very reminiscent of everybody's favorite Russian video game, Tetris.
Definitely.
Thankfully, the pieces aren't moving. That's the one. That's one thing that it makes it happen. The theme of the game is it's Indian summer. That one freakish hot spell right before the beginning of winter, before winter sets down in earnest.
Right, and that's what we call it here in the United States, when it's a hot autumn.
Actually, it seems to happen more on the East Coast than out here on the West. West Coast, we basically don't have a lot of fall. It sort of transitions from summer right into winter.
Pretty much.
Yeah, we have two seasons, hot and dry and cold and wet. And it sort of flickers between for a little while. In fact, today it was, again, flickering between hot, dry, and cold and wet. But you're taking a walk through the woods and you're looking for feathers and mushrooms and nuts and berries. Berries, yes, blueberries. And you're looking for animals. And you have a player board in front of you that has 6 areas on it. And then you have this big old box and ring full of Tetris-shaped pieces.
They're called polyominoes.
Yes, they are. I still like Tetris pieces. I'm sorry. It looks like Tetris to me.
Yeah.
And these pieces all have holes in them. And you begin to wonder why they have holes in them until you look at your player board. Scattered about your player board are images of feathers and nuts and berries and mushrooms. So the idea of the game is to line up these Tetris pieces with the bonuses visible through the holes. And when you can see one through a hole, you put a little token on it, a matching token. And when you fill one of these 6 areas, you get to collect all the tokens that you have on the board. And that's all well and good. If you can manage to set up a series of holes that matches one of the animal tiles in the center of this swirling mass of Tetris pieces, you get to collect that. You get to place it over the holes, and the animal tiles have to go right over holes. They can't go over closed regular spaces. And then you get to collect all those rewards a second time. And you can use the rewards to reload your particular path of 5 Tetris tiles early. You can use them to acquire squirrels. Squirrels are 1 square tokens, which you go use to fill in single spaces. You will have single spaces unless you are the king, queen, god, emperor, empress of Tetris in the world, and you get the right lucky draws every time. Something I've never seen. Have you?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So the object of the game, it is definitely a race game. The tokens are used to trade for power-ups. So you use berries. You can turn 2 berries into a mushroom. Mushrooms are used to play a tile from someone else's board and one from the main supply. Exactly. Thank you. If you're playing the 2-player game, if you're playing 3 or more players, you get to raid other people's stuff and you get to play twice. If you use a nut, you get a squirrel, like I said before. And if you use a feather, you get to play twice from your own supply.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
that helps accelerate the race.
Absolutely. And the goal is to fill your forest floor with leaves and squirrels. The first person who does it wins.
I would say triggers end game.
Yeah, that's true, because at the end game, you can use any nut. You can trade up for any nuts you have. Remember, 2 blueberries equals a nut. And then you can spend any nuts you have to buy squirrels to fill in patches. So as it turned out, the time that we played this, that Cathy and I played this, I triggered endgame, but she was close enough behind me that she was able to fill up her board with squirrel tokens. We were very close at the end. I mean, I think I was 2 squares ahead of her at filling up everything. And then the tiebreaker is who's got the most nuts. So since I was most nuts, I mean, I had the most nuts, I got to win. But it was a really good game. It's a really fun abstract game. I really, really enjoy it. I do have one small hitch. The gameplay is great. I really think this is going to be exceptionally good when you get more than 2 players in it. It'll play up to 4. And I really think that the one nagging gripe I have about this game is that the player boards and the tiles are the same finish. And it's real easy if you bump your player board to have your tiles start shifting around everywhere. If you're dropping a tile into a spot that's surrounded on more than 2 sides, everything tries to wiggle around.
And that happens too when you remove the little tokens from the board as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the consensus, I know you thought the same thing, Cathy, that a change in finish on one of the surfaces.
One or both.
Yeah, one or both. But
had they done both surfaces with like a linen finish, I think that would not have been an issue. Yeah, but they did them both in a high gloss finish.
Right, and they do. Yeah, is it both of them in linen would have caused some interlocking, which would make it a little harder to jostle. I really don't think that putting a rim around it would have helped much, because you've got so many different possibilities of puzzle pieces in the middle of this grid.
Right, but you can't go outside the edge of the board. And if you'd put a rim around the edge of the board, kind of like the broken token trays for Terraforming Mars, everything fits down into very specific cutouts. And if you just had one giant cutout going around the edge, that would have held the pieces in place. Once you filled up the board, it would have.
Yeah, but there's a lot of game space between nothing on the board and getting the board full enough where it's going to be where the where the rim is going to come into play. I really think it would have been.
That's true.
I think it would have been an unnecessary addition of weight and space. I just think a different finish would have been much better. But the long and the short of this is it's a beautiful game. The tiles are different colors of greens and yellows and reds. It really does look like fall in any place that has, non-deciduous trees or deciduous trees. I'm sorry. But it's a beautiful looking game. It's an easy to learn game. This is the second supposedly of a trilogy. The first game was Cottage Garden from 2016, which also is a Tetris-y type game. They say this game is firmly geared toward experienced players, but I really don't think you need a whole lot of experience to play this game. If you can do a jigsaw puzzle, you can play this game.
Yeah. And Uwe Rosenberg's first game like this was Patchwork, but that had an economic element to it. By the way, I haven't played Patchwork yet. It's a game that's on my list that I would really like to play. So if you're in my play group and you own Patchwork, please bring it to a play day when I'm going to be there so that we can play it, because I would like to try it.
I would too, strangely enough.
Well, then we're just going to have to get this game because it's a 2-player only game. Anyway, probably the only other gripe that I might have had with Indian Harvest. I forget where I was going before that, but the only other gripe I might have had with Indian Summer, is that on the one side of the tokens, they had artwork that was beautiful. For the little treasure tokens, the berries, the nuts, the mushrooms, and the feathers, they had beautiful artwork, but it blended in to the leaf artwork, which I think that was what it was intended. It was supposed to look like the natural, an actual natural artwork of this stuff. But then on the other side, they had the artwork was more iconography, and that made it stand out from the artwork some. So that mitigated the issue, and I think that would probably help people who are colorblind play this game better. I know I'm not colorblind. You're not colorblind. And we both felt that the other side of the tokens blended in too much.
Yes, I think that this game could be very problematic if you are with certain types of color blindness, because certain of these pieces are going to blend together.
Yes.
If you're red-green colorblind, you're in a world of hurt here.
And you don't have to match red pieces with red pieces and yellow pieces with yellow pieces or orange pieces. Or green pieces together. You can mix and match them all you want. It's just placing the pieces that, or the shapes that go better. So to that extent, I think it is accessible to people who have color blindness. It's just you need to make sure to use the icon side rather than the almost photographic side, because that photographic side artwork is going to be hard for you to see. But really, my only major gripe with it was the different, or the similarity in finishes between the player board and the pieces. And it is the same issue that we have with another Stronghold game, and that is Terraforming Mars. The player boards are too slick for holding the pieces that need to be placed on the player boards. And if you bump the table, or your dog or cat bumps the table, your pieces are going to scatter. And the same is true with this game.
Right, but this game doesn't have a convenient storage accessory available through a company that has a lot of our money. So yeah, the initials are BT. Thank you very much. One last thing I want to say about this: the box on this game, it's really beautiful. It's very clean, very, very modern, and I think it almost, it's got the maple leaf under the title. It almost makes me think Canada instead of New England. But even still, it's, like I said, it's a great game. Mr. Rosenberg has done a wonderful job. Stronghold Games has put this together beautifully. And my recommendation is you really don't pass up a chance to play this game. It's a really good game.
So what's your rating, Mark?
I give it a 4.5. Like I said, I kind of dock it half a point because of the finish issue, but the play of the game is well worth it. Don't let that stop you. Please play this game. You're going to enjoy it. It's almost a gateway game. It's that easy to learn and fairly difficult to master. It's not a game that's going to melt your brain, but it's going to give it that nice, warm, toasty feeling.
Now, I played this game with Frank yesterday, and I asked him what his opinion of it was, and he had a lot of the same opinions that we do about it, but he gave it a 3.5, and one of the reasons he gave it a 3.5 was because he hates Tetris, and he did not like the spatial awareness that you have to place these pieces. So I want to give that caveat. I personally would probably give this a 4.5 as well. I do want to play it with a higher player count to see how that plays. I've only played it 2 players so far. But if you're not a fan of Tetris or Tetris style games, this one's probably not for you. But otherwise, I give it a hearty recommendation.
I think it's going to rock at higher player counts. I really do.
I think so too.
So I understand that you also spent a little time out Egypt way with your next game, Cathy.
Actually, we both did.
Yes, we did.
Not too long ago, a couple of episodes ago, I think, I talked about Elder Sign Omens of the Deep. Well, we have another Elder Sign expansion. And you call it an expansion because you need the base game to play it, but it's almost like a sequel. And that is Elder Sign Omens of the Pharaoh. And actually both Omens of the Deep and Omens of the Pharaoh were created for the board game after they came out as expansions for the Elder Sign Omens app, which I thought was really interesting. They designed these for the app first and then made a tabletop version of them. In this game, you're getting out of the Arkham Museum. For those that may have not have played Elder Sign, you're investigators in the city of Arkham. You work at the museum, and each player has a character. The character has asymmetrical powers, and you are trying to thwart the cultists and keep them from bringing back the great old ones from Lovecraftian literature, and preventing the world from being devoured. In Omens of the Deep, you're preventing Cthulhu himself from coming back and bringing the undead city of Relye to the surface in the South Pacific. And in Omens of the Pharaoh, you are trying to keep the evil pharaoh Nephrim Ka from rising from the dead and devouring the world. And we played this with Frank last night, with our friend Frank. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Frank.
And I had a total blast with this. One of the reasons that Elder Sign is most likely in my top 10 games of all time is that every time you play this game, the tension builds. And it's kind of a slow build because every time you lose not every time, but a lot of times when you lose a challenge, a doom token goes on the doom track and something either happens or just the tension gets ratcheted up. So in most cases, a monster appears about half the time. And the other half of the time, it's just one more token on the doom track. You get so many depending on the challenge, and the great old one comes out and you have to fight it. Basically, in video game terms, the boss monster arrives. And chances are by the time the boss monster arrives, your characters are not in top-notch fighting form because they've been fighting with the cultists. The same is true with Omens of the Pharaoh. You're going up against cultists who are trying to get Nephrim cauterized, and there are just so many fun and interesting adventure cards to play against. It's a cooperative game, so you're all working together. When we were playing last night, we got to the big boss fight, and Mark and I managed to go up against him twice each, and then we either went insane or died, and left poor Frank to do it. But Frank had the ability, as our characters were getting killed, Frank was able to power his character back up to full health. And he had, like 4 or 5 clues?
Something like that.
Which allowed him to re-roll dice. And I think he went about 12 separate turns before he was able to defeat the boss monster. And so collectively we won, but really Frank won that game, and Frank kept the world from being devoured. So yay, Frank, good job.
Once again, Frank's fault. I had to go to work today because Frank saved the world.
Yes. Anyway, it is a fun game. I give this expansion / sequel a 4.5 for sure. If you like any of the Lovecraftian style games, and if you like Elder Sign in particular, you are really going to enjoy this expansion. And the reason I call it an expansion / sequel, it's an expansion because you have to have the base game to play it. It comes with its own adventure cards, its own clock cards. It comes with new characters, but there are still elements of the base game that you need in order to play this game. But I call it a sequel because it's kind of like, it kind of feels like, okay, you've played Elder Sign and you've been down this road before, but this is a new adventure. And so maybe another episode would be a better terminology to it than a sequel. What do you think, Mark?
I think episode is a good description of it. First of all, let me say, there is nothing that sets the tone for an evening like a good thwarting. And you're right about the tension building. It almost always starts out where you're taking the easy missions. You're starting off slow, building up. But as time goes by, you realize that you're really not making any traction against putting this old one or, the Pharaoh. You've got 3 different bosses in this one. We started with the middle level boss, easy, hard, and insane. We went with a hard one. And of course, Cathy's over in the corner going, why aren't we going with the insane one? Why aren't we going with the insane one? Because we're not insane, Cathy. Unlike some people I could name. But no, the tension build every time you throw a Doom token down on that counter. In this particular episode, there are in normal Elder Sign, there are certain spots on the Doom track where monsters appear. Not so in this one. There are 4 reasonably tough quests. Reasonably tough challenges. They're called the Dark Pharaoh Special Challenges. Certain things aren't allowed on the Dark Pharaoh challenges. It costs you a sanity and a stamina to get into it. And so you think, well, why bother with them? Well, if you just sit them there every midnight for everyone that's out there, another Doom token appears. And so
you have to deal with them.
Right. And if all 4 of them are out at once at any given time, guess whose alarm clock goes off? Yes, your sleeping old one, your boss monster, your Dark Pharaoh, your creature from the other side. And one thing that people who play this game, if they decide to rush through it, they're going to have fun. But some of the best part is reading some of the flavor text on these challenges. Especially if you've got someone who can do them in a voice that makes you sound like you're actually going through it. Frustrated actor. What can I say? And
So
it's a really good game. Cathy, what's your rating on this one?
I definitely give this one a 4.5. If you are an Elder Sign fan, it's a 5 for sure. If you've never played Elder Sign before, I definitely recommend playing Elder Sign a time or two before you dive into this one. Just so you understand how it works and how this one is a little bit different. All of the expansions add their own little tweaks and changes to them, and you don't necessarily combine everything together. Last night, Frank, who is an expert in this game, was going through and he goes, "Oh, you've got this expansion in here and you've got that expansion mixed in here too. We need to separate all these out." Mm-hmm. And so I was telling Mark the other day, "Oh, by the way, Broken Token makes a crate for this one too, for Elder Sign." And he's like, "Sigh."
I'm going to spend more money on wood. I can see that coming.
Yes, because the box that Elder Sign comes in is not big enough for it and all of these expansions, and a mere box organizer is not going to do.
Right.
Because it's just the box is not physically big enough to hold all this stuff.
But the Broken Tokens organizers does come in the shape of the Arkham Museum. So that I think that's pretty cool. One thing I want to say about this, I've played a few expansions / sequels for Elder Sign. And I think by far this one is the best of the bunch. They've really got the thematic elements down right. When you see some of these, we didn't run into any, but in one of the 2 decks of adventure cards, there are hidden chambers in the pyramids that you can investigate. They really got the theming down solid on this. It's a great work by Fantasy Flight. I think, I've never actually played it on the app. I still get stymied by Cthulhu. Much less trying to go after Ithaca, like, again, somebody I know, love, and spend lots of time with. But like I said,
now,
this is the best of the bunch. The components are top notch. If you are a fan of Elder Sign, and if not, why not? No, seriously, if you're a fan of Elder Sign, get this one.
Yes. Now, there's one expansion that we don't have yet, and that is Omens of Ice, which takes place in Alaska, and one of the boss monsters is a Native American monster, or a monster from Native American mythology called Ithaca. And the rating on the app for that particular expansion is insane, and it is by far my favorite expansion on the app. I have not yet played Omens of Ice, and I am very much looking forward to it. So, alrighty. I think that's all that we've got for this part of the episode. Would you agree, Mark?
I definitely think that's what we've been playing.
We have set up and been referring to and rating games by our own rating scale. Here's how we are using this scale. 5. Buy this now. 4. A good solid game. 3. Decent with some bugs. 2. Has great potential as kindling. And 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it.
Hello there, this is Jesse, and I wanted to talk about a topic that has recently come up in my personal life and may visit yours at some point. I want to talk about the topic of burnout, which is a very good topic to discuss because it applies to both gaming and to my degree in psychology. Most of the research and discussion about burnout is usually related to job burnout, but we as gamers get burnout as well. So let's talk about what burnout actually is. Most of the time, we confuse burnout with stress. Stress is a lot of anxiety built up around something. Usually, lots of pressure you feel about performance, and then it's your body's response to such pressure. Whereas burnout is just pretty much apathy. You have reached past the point of stress. You have no fuel left to burn towards anything. So what does burnout look like? I did some research on the internet. I went to the Mayo Clinic. I went to Psychology Today, checked out a few other websites. Here are some thoughts on what burnout looks like. Have you become overly cynical or critical, whether it be at your job or with friends or something else? Do you have to drag yourself to whatever it is you're going to, whether it be work or game night? Have you become irritable or impatient with people, well beyond your normal self? Do you lack the energy to do things? Uses the word productive, and again, that's a work term, but do you just lack the energy? It's like, oh, I don't want to go to another game night. Do you lack satisfaction from things, be it your achievements or from just the hobbies you enjoy? Do you feel disillusioned? Is it just like, is this really what I want? Is this really what I'm doing? This one's serious. Are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better or to simply not feel anything at all? If you feel that symptom, just stop right now. Get some help, seriously. I'm not trying to make light of this. If you feel that's a symptom you're feeling, call your doctor, call a counselor, call someone, call your friends, and just say, hey, I think I might be experiencing this, and I need your input and possibly your help. Your sleep habits. When you're burned out, you find yourself maybe not able to get out of bed, or maybe just can't sleep. And stress causes insomnia or lethargy, but this is beyond that level. Same with appetite. And that kind of gets back to using the food to feel better or not at all. Or you find yourself just ravenous all the time, or you just want to stuff yourself silly. Or alternatively, are you not eating anything at all? And are you troubled by unexplained headaches or backaches, muscle aches, or other physical complaints? Stomach aches, a big one. You finding excuses to call in to work. All right, so these are all some serious symptoms, generally job-related or life-related. Gaming burnout, you see some of these same symptoms. You just don't want to game anymore. You don't want to go to game night. You don't want to hang out with friends. For me, I've been playing and running a lot of Dungeons and Dragons lately, and it got to a point where I didn't want to see another D20 and another fantasy character anywhere near me ever again. So it gets to you. Even your hobbies can be a source of stress and then eventually burnout. So given that, what can you do to get this turned around? The best thing is to turn to other people. Now, this might seem counterintuitive since you got burnout from gaming, for example. Reaching out to your gaming friends, because that's kind of the situation that burned you out. Instead, maybe you want to reach out to other people who aren't involved with gaming. Reach out to your partner, your family, your friends, other loved ones. Talk to them about what you're feeling. Get out and socialize. Forget gaming. Set down your D&D book or your role-playing game book or your board game and go out and see the world. There's a big, wide world out there that doesn't involve gaming, and it can be just as satisfying or at times even more satisfying than your hobbies. If your hobbies are burning you out, drop them like a stone and go find something else to do. Here's a hard one in today's day and age. Limit your contact with negative people. So stay off of social media. Seriously, I like Twitter, but some days it's just, way too much negativity on there. So try to find people who are just positive and just make you feel happy. Connect with a cause or community group that's meaningful to you. Again, we have a community group with gaming, and that might be your source of stress, so you got to find another group. Find another hobby you're interested in, or connecting to a cause. Sometimes, in order to feel good, you just want to give back to something else. There's a lot of good nonprofits out there that could use your help. Maybe spending an hour or a couple hours there on a weekend to help out, or whatever time you can spare would would help you put things in perspective and re-energize you. It's never too late to find new friends. If all of your friends are gaming friends and you find another facet of your life you want to explore, find friends in that area. And finding friends, especially as an adult, can be really hard. It was pretty easy to make friendships when you were younger. In your adult years, especially if you're married, have kids, have fixed groups you hang out with all the time, finding new friends is rough, but thankfully we live in a modern age of internet and you can find groups to do just about anything. So reach out. Reframe the way you look at things. If it's something that you can't get away from, like your job, or something you don't want to get away from, find what it is that's really bumming you out about it and try to reimagine or reframe what it is that's bumming you out. So, for example, dungeon mastering for me can burn me out. There are just times I just have to set stuff down. So what helps is I try to reframe that. And it's like, well, look at all the joy I'm bringing other people in what I do. So is there any way I can do that? And if not, is there another way to find some joy there? Balance. If you have like game night 3 or 4 nights a week, first of all, I envy you. But second of all, maybe that's too much. Maybe if you have fewer nights of gaming and more nights doing something else. Taking time off. Again, setting things down and walking away for a bit. That's always a good idea. Setting yourself some boundaries. Saying, I'm only going to spend X amount of time doing this. Or learning to say no. In America especially, success is measured by your accomplishments and achievements. And saying yes and always working extra hard. Well, you know what? Saying no is required. You have to do it. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself way too overextended and not enough time to really enjoy anything. Taking a break from technology. Again, social media can be a bummer at times, but all technology. Like an example with MMORPGs or other computer gaming, if you find yourself grinding it 20, 30, 40 hours a week, woof, and you just find yourself like frustrated with everything and you want to throw the controller across the room, just turn it off. Leave the computer or your game station alone for a few days. Go out, take a walk, explore nature. Go find yourself a great park to walk around in. Especially since, I'll check your local listings, but fall is slowly fading into winter. Those leaves are out there to enjoy and get some fresh air before the snow shows up. Nourish your creative side. Now, as gamers, we often have a creative side that's already being nourished, but nourish another side of your creativity. I do Bob Ross paintings a few times a year, and that is so much fun, having grown up and watched Bob Ross like religiously every Saturday or Sunday whenever it was on public television. I enjoyed doing that, and if you don't think you can do something like that, trust me, you can. There are classes at community colleges and other recreation centers and other places, art studios that offer classes on these things. Go try something new that's creative. I guarantee you will have more fun and do better than you think. Remember to always get plenty of sleep. People often feel burned out the most after a convention because they spent all night, every night, gaming their brains out and getting very little sleep. And then when you get back, you feel exhausted instead of recharged. So, yeah, it's great to see people in game, especially at conventions, but you do need to get yourself some sleep. At least 6 hours. Try to get more, closer to 8. Relaxation time, absolute downtime, meditation, deep breathing, yoga, find some way to re-energize and refocus just by shutting your brain off and just being. So those are all things you can do to try to combat burnout. And again, this is all very work related, but in gaming burnout, it's the same thing. Mainly, try to get away from what's burning you out for a while and then turn it around. Like for me, the D&D was getting overwhelming, especially as a dungeon master, and I was just fried. So we took a month off from the game, and I think that was the best thing for it. I spent time reading material about being a dungeon master instead of doing it. I read, there's a couple of good things, the Cobalt Guide to Game Mastering. That book has a lot of cool essays about game mastering. I read some things in there. I read the Cobalt Guide to World Building because I've been thinking about building my own world, getting away from what we're currently doing in gaming land and doing a different campaign with a different flavor to it. I read some stuff by Sly Flourish. His Lazy DM workbook and Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master are great guides for how you can do prep for long hours of gaming with very little effort. And I kind of refocused, like, part of the burnout was feeling like all the time I was spending being a dungeon master away from the table just to prepare for the game. Between the Kobold Guide and the Life Flourishes documents, I found ways to make the prep easier, simpler, so I don't have to spend a lot of time away from the table, and thus I can enjoy the gameplay more. And Dungeons & Dragons is great, but there's other flavors of role-playing games, so that's what I'm going to focus on next. If I'm going to run another campaign of something or something long-term, I might try to convince people, hey, instead of D&D, can we try something else? But for you, let's just say you ladies and gentlemen have been hitting the game table hard playing Root, one of the new hotness. And you've tried every faction, every combination of faction. You've just been playing it and loving it. And then one day, you just can't take it anymore. I mean, the cute animals waging war, there's only so much. So maybe put that down and try a trick-taking game with no theme. Might I suggest Pitch? It just requires a simple deck of cards and a little bit of rule learning. And that game is quite enjoyable. I have dozens of years of experience with family playing that to attest. But the main thing is, take a break. So anyway, that's gaming burnout. It happens to everyone. If you want more information on the topic, I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts. Go to your favorite podcast provider and search for burnout. There's a lot of great episodes on burnout, especially when it comes to gaming, and I've enjoyed quite a few of them. Anyway, that's it for me. This is Jesse, and if you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at Jess Metcalf, JESMETCALF. I'm also on the Board Game Geek as MadcapCH. Until next time, I hope you have a good time gaming, and if you are burned out, I hope you can find something creative to re-energize you and get back to the gaming table soon.
All right, for today's hot topic, we're talking about games with seasoning.
Whoa, stop. You said games with seasoning?
Yeah.
You mean this isn't my cooking for game night segment?
No. This is games that have either a seasonal theme or use seasons of the year as a mechanism.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, I suppose I can talk about those too. But yeah, I still think cooking for game night would be a good segment.
I will add that to the segment list.
Okay, so seasons, huh?
Yes.
Well, of course, in our opening segment, we did talk about Indian summer. And that is definitely about a season.
It is. It's about autumn.
And the theme... I think, like I said, I think the theme got nailed right on the head for that one.
It did. So we're not going to necessarily beat that one to death because we already have in the previous segment. But some other games that we came up with that talk about seasons or have seasons as a mechanism to move the game along. The next one is not necessarily a particular favorite of Mark's, but it is one that I enjoy, and that is Dead of Winter.
I wouldn't go so far as to say this isn't one of my favorites. I do like the game, but if I'm at all depressed, this game has got so much of a realistic bent to it, and you get so involved with your characters that you're playing as part of your faction that it could conceivably make you want to open a vein. I mean, if you get hit by a bunch of zombies at once and your proud faction that was 5 or 6 characters wide is now down to 1, and that one's infected, yeah, it can really kind of put a kibosh on your game playing time.
Yes. This is a cooperative zombie-themed game, and a lot of the artwork has snow everywhere, and you definitely get the impression that darkness comes early. This is a post-apocalyptic game. You're trying to survive the winter and foraging for supplies while trying to avoid the zombie hordes. You definitely get the winter feeling with Dead of Winter. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And it's that rare bird. It's a cooperative game with a potential for a trader mechanic.
Right.
Which
we latched onto this one because we were such huge fans of Battlestar Galactica.
Right.
And it does have the same type of mechanics as Battlestar Galactica. You're working together in this colony to survive the winter and hopefully reduce the number of zombie hordes as opposed to reducing the number of Cylons. It seems that both Cylons and zombies come in an unlimited supply. And so, yeah, I suppose I could see where you might find this game a little bit depressing. But the flavor of the theme definitely comes through. The trader mechanic makes sense. We did have to house rule this one in a similar way to how we house ruled Battlestar Galactica, that if you get the trader card and you don't feel comfortable betraying everybody, then throw it down at the beginning of the game and say, I don't want to do this. And we will gather up the loyalty cards again, shuffle them, pass them out until that person doesn't get it. Because it is important that if there is a trader in the game, that they are able to play that mechanic to its fullest in order for the theme to come out.
And the thing that I do like about the way the trader mechanic is executed in Dead of Winter is that you don't always have a trader. There's a very good chance that you could conceivably not have a trader, but you're always on the lookout for them.
Right.
Which, of course, is going to make all sorts of fun because, if you whack somebody who's you think is a traitor and lo and behold, it turns out they're not, well, of course, you're in a deeper pile of doo-doo than you were before you did it.
Because it hits morale. Right.
And, well, of course, more dead bodies for zombies to crawl out of.
Right.
It's a good game. If you're like me and invest yourself in any game that has characters as opposed to just players, I tend to invest myself a little heavy. Just ask anybody who's played Battlestar Galactica with me. I take my role as Admiral, which I usually can get fairly seriously. Likewise, in this one, I take my role as a survivor seriously. And when your survivors start becoming former survivors, it can be a boot to your brain. So if you're one of those people like me who gets emotionally invested in your characters in your game, be forewarned. I don't by any stretch of the imagination recommend you pass on this game. I mean, it did get a 4 from me, but remember, make sure you're in a good mood before you start playing.
Now, one of the characters that I absolutely love, and I love seeing this character come in.
I know who you're talking about too, because it's gorgeous.
It's Sparky the Wonder Dog. It's a golden retriever with a cape, and Sparky the Wonder Dog plays just like any other character. He can forage for supplies. He can actually be the trader. I did hear a story on the Dice Tower one time. One of their Tales of Horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the Tales of Horror that Eric Summer voices. And he told a story where the trader won the game and the character that was the traitor was Sparky the Wonder Dog. And I will never forget that story. It was just so funny. And Eric Summer did an awesome job of telling it. So anyway, that is Dead of Winter.
Sparky the Wonder Dog is never the traitor. Sparky the Wonder Dog is looking out for Sparky.
So that is Dead of Winter. And then the next game that we want to talk about is one of our favorites that we don't own yet. And that is Viticulture. This is a worker placement game that uses seasons as a way to move the game along. And when you move from one season to the next, there are different places to place your worker. There are different tasks to accomplish. And you move from one season to the next when everybody has completed all of the tasks that they can possibly do and pay for in that season. And then everybody moves to the next season and then the next. And you go from spring to summer to fall to winter. And the tasks all make sense for those particular seasons in a vineyard.
Absolutely. Viticulture is it's a Stonemeyer game. Mm-hmm. Jamie Stegmeyer is involved with it. And, usually I pretty much like just about everything Jamie Stegmeyer and his crew put out. And this one was surprisingly pleasing to me because it doesn't really feel like much of a Stegmeyer game. But I mean, because there's nobody, running around in giant, oil burning mechs trying to stomp on one another, or, nobody's trying to take over the world. You're just trying to make wine. And it really, I mean, in the early spring, you plant. During the summer and the fall, you have your visitors who come to the winery to taste wine and to watch the harvest. And then in the wintertime, you're, blending the wines, aging the wines, and selling the wines. I mean, it's really well done. And I was pleasantly surprised when I first got to play this with our dear friend Rich. Rich, thank you for introducing this game to us. Richard Bright. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
And it really is a fun game. I really was, like I said, I was really pleasantly surprised by this. The seasonal nature of the game really does come forward. And it's really, really pretty good.
Now, I know I give this game a 5. When we do acquire a copy of it, it is not going to go onto our unplayed shelf. It is going to go straight onto the games we're keeping shelf. Mm-hmm. And yes, we do have separate shelves for those. And I thoroughly enjoy this game, and I wish we owned a copy. Another game that uses seasons to move the game along is Kingsburg.
Cathy, one more thing I do want to say.
Oh, okay.
For those of you out there who are longtime listeners of our show here, this is one of the few games on the planet that Cathy and I both rate at a 5.
Yes.
We have, while we're both big board gamers, we do have definitely different, just enough to keep it varied, tastes in games. Mm-hmm. From Jump Street, this game was a 5 for both of us. There was never any doubt from the first time we played the game. Never any doubt, never any wonder. Viticulture has been a 5, and it's only been the trials and tribulations of normal life that has kept us from getting a copy of this. So anybody who's listening out there, if you're worried about whether your significant other, friends, game partners are going to like this game, don't worry your head.
Well, I would say if they like worker placement games, they're going to like this game.
And we do both like worker placement games. I mean, it's one of the few genres of games where that we both really enjoy.
Yep.
And this one is definitely worth the time, money, and interest.
In fact, the next 2 games that we're going to talk about, I believe, are also worker placement games.
After a fashion, absolutely.
Yes. The next one that uses seasons to move the game along, it's not necessarily the theme. The theme is high fantasy. But the seasons of the year do move the game along, and that is Kingsburg. And in Kingsburg, you are rolling dice and then placing them on the track to gain gain resources and prepare for the winter when the demon hordes attack.
Well, they're not all demons, but the monsters do come out in the wintertime.
Yes.
They're starving and they need, fresh meat. And, well, you just happen to be the closest source. And did you prepare your defenses well enough or not?
Right. And isn't this game, it's been a little while since we've played it. Isn't this game sort of a semi-cooperative, semi-competitive game?
Well, it's competitive in the fact that you want to be the one that racks up the most victory points at the end of the game. It's really, I really can't say it's cooperative because you're all competing for resources. Everybody gets attacked separately by the monsters at the end of the year, and you really can't help one another out. You're all rushing to build your defenses. You're all rushing to build your stockpile of goods so you can build your buildings, which give you the victory points to win. I don't think there's any cooperative in this.
Okay. Like I said, it's been a while since I've played it.
Mm-hmm. And, it's a great game. I mean, if you want to get together and just chuck dice, and Elder Sign's not available, this is a good dice chucker. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
And this was introduced to me by Frank. Hello, Frank.
Hi, Frank.
And I used to like to play it a lot. I don't play it as much anymore, but I do really enjoy it. It does get kind of repetitive if you play it a lot. So that's why my rating on this is only a 4.
I did hear that they came out with a second edition, and I have not yet played that, but I do think Frank owns it. So we're going to have to check that one out.
Yeah, this one has kind of fallen off our radar over the years because like I said, there's always something new that we have to try.
Yes, but Frank, just FYI, I would not mind playing it again sometime soon.
Okay. That's, like I said, it's a good game. It's a strong game. It's not that complicated a game.
Right.
And
all right.
You got one more for us, Cathy?
Yep. The last one we're going to talk about, you can't talk about games that use seasons as a theme or as a mechanism without talking about, of course, Seasons, which is Sarah Reed's favorite game of all time. She ranted and raved about it so much that Mark and I finally borrowed it from her in order to play it because she said it was a game we just absolutely had to try. And we tried it and we enjoyed it.
We did, and I still do. In fact, this game is one of the games that you can play over on Board Game Arena.
Yes.
And if you can't scare up a set or you can't scare up, it really, it works 2-player, but it's really better with more players, like most games that aren't designed as 2-player games. And scaring up a table of 4 on Board Game Arena is not terribly difficult. And it really, the online iteration of this game really keeps all of the flavor of the game. It like with any online version of a board game, it does lose a little bit, but it still hangs on pretty well.
Okay, now I've only ever played this game against you and on the tabletop. I have not ventured into Board Game Arena. So can you tell us a little bit more about the gameplay itself?
Well, the gameplay is mostly, it's a combination dice chucker, card drafter. You have a hand of cards. You use different dice in every season to generate one of 4 earth, air, fire, water. Or I think actually it's earth, air, plant, and spirit, I think. But basically it's the 4 different groups of magical types, and you can collect them and sell them for I can't remember for the life of me what they call the points, but basically you need some of these points to cast spells.
Similar to mana?
Kind of.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm grasping at it, but I'll probably remember it about 2:00 in the morning. I'll wake out of a sound sleep and I'll know, oh, that's what it was. But you're casting these spells. These spells give you more points or more material to cast other spells, and it goes around the table. It goes around this circular track for, I think it's either 4 or 5 times, and most points wins. It's a card drafting and card playing game. Combined with the dice drafting for the, for the resources that you need to win the game. And it really is fun. It's a little on the complex side to learn, but once you get through the learning, and by the way, the iconography on this one is really clear, really sharp, really able to be determined at a glance. It's definitely not trek through the confusing symbols.
Mm-hmm. And it's fantasy themed.
Right. Well, anything with wizards is generally going to be fantasy themed.
Yeah. But
it's fun.
You move through the seasons of the year as you're playing. And so you can do different things in different seasons. Right.
Different seasons provide you with different materials. Spring is for the plant base, the life. Winter is for air. And like I said, my memory is failing me on a couple of these. But it's, like I said, it's all in all a good game. And the seasons are, represented, they're basically at the core of the game, which is really, I think, the thing that got us to the point of talking about games with seasons is that Seasons has, it basically takes the seasons and makes it into a game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what games do you enjoy playing that are seasonally based? We actually, we sat down to talk about this, and we had trouble coming up with games that utilize seasons. I asked people on Twitter what their suggestions were, and most of them came up with the games that we've talked about here. One other one that was thrown out to me by my niece Nicole, hi Nicole, was photosynthesis. But I don't think that the seasonal aspect comes through in photosynthesis necessarily, except that some of the trees have yellow leaves. Some of the trees look like Christmas trees, pine trees. Some of the trees are bright green.
And the bluest blue spruce you'll ever see.
Right. But I wouldn't necessarily say that you have seasons.
I would agree. I would agree with you 100% there. And
good suggestion, Nicole. I just don't think it quite hits that theme. Mm-hmm. All right. So anyway, what are your suggestions? Do you have any games that we missed in this list? We'd love to hear about it. You can let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or BoardGameGeek.com in guild number 2600. Thanks for joining me for this discussion, Mark. I really appreciate it.
It, as always, has been my pleasure.
The Dice Tower Network is a proud supporter of the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund. The board gaming community is kind and generous, and this fund was created to provide financial assistance to members of the board gaming community in their time of need. If your game is turned upside down and you need assistance, please visit jackvassell.org/apply. Find out how we can help.
right, so now we're getting towards the end of the episode and we're winding things down and looking ahead. And as you may have noticed during the earlier part of the episode, Mark and I do things together a lot. And in getting ready for this particular segment, we're like, okay, what are you looking forward to? Pretty much the same thing you're looking forward to. Not only do we live together and game together, but we also work for the same company doing the exact same job. We don't see each other.
Well, not the exact same.
Yes, you cover more products than I do. But we both provide technical support for Nest products. And we don't actually see each other a lot at work. I mean, we don't, we're not working side by side all day, every day. But we do go to work right now 3 out of 7 days together. He has 2 different days off than I do. And so our lives right now are pretty parallel with one another. Without a whole lot of divergence. So with that being said, we're actually looking forward to a lot of the same things, aren't we, sweetheart?
Yes, we are. There are a plethora of new job opportunities where we're working that have just posted opening up. And one of them I interviewed for today. Cathy scheduled an interview for it tomorrow. And we may know by the end of the week if one, none, or both of us get into this program.
Right. And then there's another job opening that we've both been encouraged to apply for as well.
Right.
And, so that's interesting. And then we play in the same D&D group, which pretty soon that's going to be D&D groups, because we have our friends Dwayne and Lexi are starting up a game together.
Hi, Dwayne. Hi, Lexi.
And then we're playing in our friend Doc Cross's game as well. Hi, Doc. And I got to say, I have never played with Lexi as a GM, so I can't attest to her as a GM, although I am really looking forward to it because she is a writer as a hobby. And her writings are very creative and entertaining, and her storylines are very entertaining. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what she and Dwayne have put together. I have played in games with Dwayne as a DM and thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I've said on the show before, I thoroughly enjoy Doc's D&D games as well.
Right. And we have played with Lexi as a player in a role-playing game, and she is pretty much a kick-ass role player as well.
Yes, she is.
And so, they're putting together a multi-group campaign, Dwayne and Lexi are, and they are going to have a hack and slash group and a role-playing group, and guess who he's tagged to be in the role-playing group? Both my beloved bride and myself, because he's seen us play and he knows how well we get into our characters. And so we're both looking forward to that. I think we've picked really good character concepts and trying to write up the backstories on these characters. It's pretty cool. So I'm sure we'll be hearing reports about that in the near to fairly near future.
Now, this is the first game where the DM, or in this case, DMs, have asked for intricate backstories. And they're asking not for level 1 characters. They want us to have higher level characters to play with. So I find that really interesting. And and they've also instructed us that we are not to talk to one another about the characters that we're developing. Our characters don't know each other right off the bat, and so they don't want us talking to one another about them, which I have found a little difficult to do, especially with Mark, because I bounce ideas off of him all the time. Well,
I've got to say, when I've run games with you in them, and when I've played with you, it's easy to forget how new you are at this role-playing thing. You haven't been a 20 or 30 year role player like like myself and most of the crew who cut their teeth on the original version of AD&D. And you do it well.
You.
And it's a case of, I can't wait to see what's going to come out of your mouth next.
And he doesn't always say that either.
Yeah. Well, no, I usually can't wait to hear what's going to come out of your mouth next, whether I'm looking forward to it or whether I'm dreading it. I'm always looking forward to what's coming out of your mouth next. Yeah. So that basically our next 2 weeks are going to be a case of potential changes, but mostly just the same stuff day after day.
Well, and also too, we're
also good though.
Forward to at our work what's called a shift bid, and that's where we get to change our shifts. And so we actually have the potential of getting our weekends off again and getting them off together.
That would be very cool,
because that is very conducive to being able to play games with our friends more often. Of course, that'll mean our Tuesday afternoon game group will go by the wayside, but we'll be able to rejoin our broader gaming circle and play games on the weekends. So that will be nice. Mark and I, our job goes by your power ranking, which does not necessarily mean seniority. In fact, it doesn't mean seniority at all. It goes by how well you're doing at your job and, in a large part, your attendance. So if you go to work when you're supposed to go to work and you do your job really well and you're striving to improve, then you're going to get a better power ranking. And when shift bids come up, then you get a better choice of what shift you work, and you might get the days off that you want. And so we actually have that coming up. We're supposed to have our desired shifts turned in by the end of the month. We've both turned ours in already. So probably in the first or second week of December, we'll find out what our new shifts will be. And so that's a little bit exciting, and with the prospect of hopefully getting to play games with our friends on the weekends again and not having to go to bed at 7:30 at night in order to get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in order to be at work at, oh my God, it's so early.
Yes. Oh my God, o'clock. I hate that time.
So anyway, that's what's going on in our life going forward. Mark, how can people connect with you online?
Well, if you want to connect with me on Facebook, I'm there. Imagine that as Mark Ford. On Twitter, I am known as @TheAmusedGeek, and that came from I used to be disgusted. Now I'm just amused. And of course, if you need to get a message to me through any of the other channels, you can probably send a note to Cathy at the Board Game Geek Guild, which, as I'm told, is number 2600. I don't look in there an awful lot, but Cathy monitors it. And if you really needed to get something to me, you could probably get it through her.
And you can reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter handle there is @OurTurnPodcast. I do have my own Twitter handle, but I don't check it that often because I have so much fun on the Our Turn Podcast one. And then you can also reach out to me on BoardGameGeek.com at guild number 2600. And you can find links to all of this stuff in the show notes at OurTurnPodcast.com/episode 92. Mark, thanks for joining me on this episode. It's always nice to have you on.
I can't believe it's already episode 92.
I know.
That means 100 in 2 months. 100 will be barreling down on us.
It's going to be end of January. And
wow, that's just cool, Cathy. It's always a pleasure for me to join you on this podcast. I really do enjoy recording with you, and I really do enjoy reaching out to all the Our Turn fans out there.
All right, so until next time, and on behalf of the entire Our Turn podcast crew, that was our turn.
Now it's yours. So go out there and play some games.
Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on November 28, 2018, and is written and produced by Cathy and Mark Ford with assistance from Jesse Metcalf. Next time we will discuss our most played games in 2018. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail, or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Incidental music was provided by Purple Planet Music. Please check out our show notes to learn more about these talented artists. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 92. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like Board Games with Panda, Tabletop Game Talk, or Board Game Blitz by going to dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.